This meeting of the school building committee to order at 6:06 PM. Roll call: Ann Dixon. Here. Alita Hall. Here. Anna Isabel Dos Reis Kutu. Amy Anzalone. Kristen Bagley. Here. Christine Kennedy. Here. Bill Conti. Chris DeVerna.
Here.
Hillary Lima. Russ Hill.
Here.
James Pearson.
Here.
Kristen Danusis. Dan Perillo.
Here.
JP Verducci.
Here.
Don Coward.
Yeah.
We have a quorum. In the event of an emergency, exit out the door that you came in, right, Don?
Yep, then you can turn to your left or your right, it's gonna take you right back out the building.
Review of minutes, we have one set this evening from April 7th, our last meeting. And do I hear a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from April 7th of the school building committee.
We have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion?
My name's spelled wrong, but I'm not too picky.
We can make that a friendly amendment.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Project updates.
So I'll start off and Russ can jump in. Dan, you probably will be able to jump in at some point as well. There's a lot of things happening in the district or gearing up. So in terms of the gym, we were able to get some of our projects started at the gym, mostly demo at this point. And so our staff, our Coventry staff went in and took down all the banners, all the padding, our cameras, anything that was valuable that we wanted out of the gym. And then a demo team came in. The demo team has, they started last Monday. They ripped out the bleachers. They're lifting up the floor. They're doing all the work that has to be done to kind of get the gym ready for the next phase, which Russ, you might be able to help better than me, but I think the next phase is to get up to the ceiling, clean off the rafters,
Yep.
and then start painting.
Painting.
Do you want to add anything else?
No, you hit it all and like, we did save a lot of the motors that were in there for the basketball hoops, and we saved some of the backboards. Anything that was decent, we saved, and we're gonna store it over at Oak
Wait a
Haven.
second. Are we actually live? It says something about starting webinar.
I looked online, so I don't know why. it
Okay,
says
just want to
that.
make sure.
Yeah.
I want to hear.
I don't know why it says a practice session.
Transparent or whatever.
I don't know what that means. I'll hit start anyways, but it was online because I was listening to it. when
Okay,
we first
just
got
want to
here.
make sure.
Yep, go ahead.
We saved everything that was savable, and we think that we could reuse, electric motors, clocks. Anything that we thought was decent, we saved.
Reuse in that gym or to go somewhere else later?
In that gym, but there was a few things that we can use even over at Alan Shaw and Feinstein, the junior high. That we could use over there, that goes to that gym too, like some of the nettings and stuff like that.
So that project is clicking along. For us to be done by the time school year starts, we have to keep a really tight timeline because one thing is contingent on the next. Like the flooring has to be delivered, has to sit there for a little while before it can get installed, but the bleachers can't be done until the flooring's in. There's all these things that don't have to line up perfectly, but the go date is beginning of the school year. So that's kind of moving along. And that one is part of the Equity Initiative Grant, just to remind everybody. So a big portion, about 2/3 of that is being paid for by the state, and then we're paying the difference through our bond. But we won't have any payments due until after our bond has passed. So they're working off of POs right now. Also in the Equity Initiative Grant are science labs at the high school. And so we have gone through, we are basically replacing all the cabinetry in the science labs. I think there's 14 rooms altogether.
14.
And nothing is going to be moved in terms of utilities, right? We're not moving any electric, we're not moving any plumbing, we're not moving any gas or anything. We're just replacing the tabletop units with new tabletop units and then some other seating. Our team will hook up we have a plumber who will hook up all the water in the sinks. We'll bring an electrician to do all of the electric, and then the gas lines are probably not going to be hooked up right now. I might have mentioned this at a previous meeting, but the plumber is not confident that the lines running through the rest of the building don't have pinholes in them, and he doesn't want to run the gas lines. He feels like before we turn the gas on for Bunsen burners that we need to replace the back line. So we're going to have the fixtures in place. We're just not going to hook them up they've been working off of tabletop sterno type units, and that's been, so far, has been successful. So we can keep that practice in place until we can replace those other lines. Is there anything else with that, Russ?
No, it's gonna be, the plumbing's gonna be in-house, like you said, and then the electrical. We're gonna bring in, a company to do electric hookups.
Um,
Can I ask a question on that?
yes,
Was there a reason that one's equity initiative grant, is that change anything or?
so what happened was, when we first had the building committee together, I'm not sure which year it was in, but RIDE came out with this grant opportunity. So we wrote the grant, myself, Phil, I don't know if Rush, you were there too, but we wrote the grant and we targeted the gym, we targeted the auditorium, sound and lights, we targeted the science labs, and then the fitness centers. But the good news is the money that's earmarked for each project doesn't have to stay with each project. They take the grant as a whole. So there is a little bit of sliding. So if one thing ends up costing a little bit more than another, you can slide over. So of those 4 projects, the fitness centers are the lowest priority. So if for some reason something shifts and the dollar amount dedicated to them gets adjusted or lessened or whatever, we can do that. I talked to Mario and he said that's not an issue. So those projects were just identified and put into it. I actually think a lot of the equity initiative projects were identified as we were still building out the $25 million bond. Like we weren't even finalized on all of the other projects and we had that one in.
So these outside of the 25 million?
So, the portion that we pay is inside the 25 million, or whatever our percentage, like a third.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is, taken care of by RIDE. Actually, if it was outside, we probably would have done them already. We're on our second extension, believe it or not. So the first one was due, I think, in June of 24. We did an extension to June of 25, and then we did a second extension to June of 26. But the nature of the library, the nature of the gym and the science labs, they have to be done during the summer. They can't be done any other time. The light and sound in the auditorium can be done maybe over a February break or December break, depending, because it's not like a primary learning space. And the fitness center, depending on how that all shakes out, that can be adjusted as well. So these other 2 projects have to be done now. I'm not gonna say much about the sewer. I think Russ and Dan could probably tell you more than I can, but we're working with West Warwick and trying to get everything in place. So let me back up. So right now we're on our septic system. And when you have a septic system, basically whatever goes down the drain, it goes to the septic system. But when you're connected to the sewer, there's all kinds of rules about what can go down the drain because now it's going into a sewer and the water's checked and to make sure you're not dumping things that are gonna destroy the environment. So I don't know if you guys want to pick it up from there,
We
kind of
met with
explain.
Jeff Chapdelaine and Bob Rose from West Warwick, because obviously there's pre-treatment qualifications that we have to go to before we hook up the high school to it. So we're actually having a meeting tomorrow with Fussin O'Neill. They've identified a couple of grease traps and some other kind of valve that we need to put into the high school prior to connection. So those 2 are also gonna happen this summer, to get that ready to roll. The bid is going out next week. We're hoping for it to come in around 4.4, 4.5. So between Senator Reed's money and the school bond money, we have enough money to cover it. If it goes over that, we may need to dip into the school bond a little bit more. However, we won't know that until the bids come out. But everything's up and ready. The plan got approved by DEM. We have all the permits. And just waiting for the bids to go out and a contractor to respond. And we'll know where we stand from there.
And so to get a head start, what we did is, on our school committee meeting on Thursday, we have an impact fee item, which is to pay for those 3 or 4, 5 things that are required, the grease traps, the lint traps, all the things that are required. We're gonna use impact fees, would you say 22,000?
About 22,000.
Because we want to get a head start on that. You know, it's gonna be a busy summer and, you know, when this project gets going, we don't want to be held up on anything small. So Russ and his team are gonna be able to get the impact fee money and get that started. And, you know, if there's an opportunity to pay that back or to do something with it, we will, but right now we just want to move forward with that.
The 1.2 is our portion of that. You said you want the bids to come in at 4.
We're hoping the bid's gonna come in around 4.4, 4.5.
So the-
3.2 from Jack Reed.
Okay, so that's the 1.2.
1.2 from the school bond is the 4.4. Anything over that, we're gonna have to Where's the magic?
And that would be kind of, well, I don't know if it was like settled, but we talked about that last week, right? That we had, last time, that we had like that 500,000 here, there. So we're same kind of concept. We're doing these, seeing where we land, and then we'll see what happens. That in our minds would be the stuff that drops off. So
Right.
we can finish the big project.
Yeah.
Right, and so we had Phil hook back up with Garland Roofing, who gave us a price on the roof. And hook back up with now looking at the scope of the fire suppression and the sewer hookup. And so all those numbers came in higher than the bond, because the bond was in 23. So everything's coming in a little bit higher than we had budgeted for in the first go round, because it's taken us so long to get to this point. So to your point, some things are either gonna drop off or be adjusted, but the big projects, like not the nice to haves, but the have to haves,
Yeah.
we gotta make sure they get done. First and foremost. The Western Well is hopefully a bright spot. We're hoping to meet on this again next week or the week after, but we've been working with DEM, we've been working with Department of Health and the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, because it turns out that we qualify for an EPA loan. And that's actually not a loan, it's an EPA grant. And the grant still is in place as of now, like the grant hasn't been removed by anything, so the infrastructure bank is gonna meet with us, I think it's next week or the week after. And the reason why they're involved is because they pay directly. So the EPA money goes to them and then they pay everybody directly and the money's held by them. So that, because it's part of this EPA grant, if everything goes the way it's supposed to, the $600,000 or $700,000 that was budgeted for that well project will be paid for. We won't have to worry about it. That'd be fantastic. And he, the guy who designed it basically put everything in there that you would think of that you would need. A backup generator, like you name it, it's in there, because some of the issues we've had in the past is not just with the well itself, but it's the pipes, it's the filter, it's the generator, it's all the things that are connected to it. So that might be good news if everything goes the way it's supposed to. And then the last thing is the sprinkler project. So we walked with the fire marshal again. The fire marshal gave us a few things to do. Russ, over April vacation, already had his team fix anything that we can fix in the school that's not sprinkler related. The only other two things that actually circle back up to the science labs are vent hoods for the science chemistry labs so that you can vent out fumes. So we're building those into the science lab. So on top of the cabinetry work and the furniture, we're gonna replace those fume hoods. And when the fume hoods get replaced, that comes off the fire marshal list as well. And then everything at that point is just basically sprinklers.
So you said replace, meaning they're hoods that just don't work.
They don't work and they don't use them because they don't work. So they're in really bad shape. So we've been working with Jensen Hughes and with Phil. And so everything that needs to go to the fire marshal's office has been sent over there in terms of our timeline, our plan, the specifications of the work, how we plan on addressing everything. They're gonna have a consent letter that they'll draw up that will sign off that basically says, we're gonna do this work within this time period. And then everything else we need to go out to get an RFP is just pretty much done. And then we'll be able to do an RFP for that work, because that fire suppression work is gonna go probably a whole year to get done. And I think some of it, if it's running during the school year time, is absolutely gonna have to be second shift work. Yeah,
Just a small question on the hoods. Is everything venting that up and out?
that's
Good to
what,
go?
well, right, when that gets replaced, everything above it's being replaced to go up. It's not really the ductwork that's the issue, it's the actual fan that's supposed to pull it out. So they have it's like retrofitted into the space, and then they'll just do casework around it to make sure that it, it matches in with everything else they have going on. They're kind of funny, and I'm not a chemistry teacher, and I don't recall this from my own high school experience, but some of the rooms are up against each other, and they actually share one hood between two rooms in this, like a sliding door, so that either side of it could use it at one time. So that's the old system. The doors are not sitting right, the fans don't operate the best. So that's why when we did this equity initiative grant, we made that a priority, because one, a lot of our projects are either facilities related or, athletics or auditorium. We wanted to do something that was significant, that was academic. When we had our accreditation walkthrough, they did note that there was, room for improvement in our science labs. We're doing advanced AP work in science. We're doing biomed. We have all these programs that we're proud of, but a space that's not wonderful. So that should be a big deal. And then the sprinkler work will move along and hopefully will get done in the time period that we need. Is there anything else you need to add, Russ?
No, I think you hit it all. Just a matter of time.
Any questions on any of those?
You know, we
Before
are
we
gonna
go?
have the chem tank pumped. That's,
Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
okay, as we were looking at blueprints, we found a chemical tank that was out front, which comes from the chem labs. So, and it's actually a good thing. It's outside. We thought we were gonna have to replace it, put one inside. This is outside, so it was a good thing, but it hasn't been pumped for a few years. So I had a company, Saybrook, come out from Connecticut, and they gave me a price on getting it pumped out, and they put new limestones in the bottom of it to neutralize it, and that's also gonna be on the impact fee list.
Are we also including the disposal of,
Well, I'm still waiting for the quote.
Yeah.
We had a lot of chemicals up in that closet up there that basically been there for,
they've expired?
they shouldn't even be.
Yeah.
It probably in the same room at this
Yeah.
time, you
Yeah.
know?
Like when you go, like the old pharmacy pictures from like the Hallmark movie
Yeah,
and there was like.
It was,
Yeah.
That-
yeah.
But
So-
they're in a dedicated space. They have, the proper, lids and everything on. They're just, it's old. They need to go. And it's not the kind of thing you could throw in the trash, right? So they just sit there. But since we're having them come
Yeah.
pump out that tank, they also provide the service where they'll take all of the chemicals and dispose them in the proper fashion so that they're not being, dumped down a drain
What
or.
goes in that tank normally, just when they're done using them?
Wait,
Anything down the sink, they have like, a glass drain that goes out and it goes into that.
Oh,
But I got a price on everything. Well, I'll get the price. They came out Thursday to give me a quote on all the bad chemicals that we have in there to get rid of. So I'll have that this week, I'm sure.
Are you guys putting in like ventilated chemical storage as part of the update?
Well, that does have a vent in there itself, so, no, I don't think that's in the plan of,
The only thing he did say on the fire marshal report is to not just look at the vent hoods in those fans, but also just to make sure the HVAC in that space in general
yeah.
That's good.
is
And
good.
we did put new motors on up there and everything is running. It's all connected through the chem labs and it is running, so.
It's 14 rooms that are all in the same general vicinity of each other, so when people go up there, it's gonna be, I think well received, especially for kids who might be coming here for programs or kids who are staying here for programs. I went through those fast. Is there anything else on those? Okay,
I like it. I got a margarita. with my
I
name
know,
on it.
I know.
The line, right.
So I guess moving into the next one, and this might even fall under number 9 too, but the timeline, I think, for these items. And then also the other elementary schools and the middle school. Because that the criticism is gonna come in that, what about the other schools? And I know the whole idea behind this bond and the projects we selected was so that every school was touched, so. I think we just wanna make sure that when we put any timeline together, we include those projects that haven't already started
Yeah.
as well.
So Phil wasn't able to come tonight. He got caught in traffic in Connecticut. I guess the storm was coming across, so he wasn't
Yeah.
able to get through. But he was, he's somebody who I think needs to be really a part of the timeline discussion, which means we'll have to move it to another agenda because I seem to recall from a prior meeting, him being very specific about which project happened along with other projects to maximize whatever incentives we have left. And so if we just do them in any random order, we might be leaving money on the table. So I know some of them are happening right away because they have to, like the ones I just talked about. All of those are basically all in motion. The only one on not on that list that is probably the next one down is the middle school roof, because the middle school roof's in rough shape. But then after that, I think there is some opportunity to maybe package things together and create a timeline. That's not my area of expertise, so I think Phil really needs to be part of that conversation. I know you guys know a little bit about it, but
Well, just kind of to address that comment, right? So I'm as an unbiased person, my kids don't go here to school, well, one of them still does, but you know, whatever it is, what it is, right? But just as a person who knows what's going on and sitting in this room, right? Maybe some of those other, we just started talking about all the budgets coming in over, right? Maybe every school doesn't get touched. So maybe we gotta start thinking about what that messaging is like. I mean, the projects that we're doing are very high priority. As you
Yeah.
hear them, you need sprinkles, so maybe something starts to need to be crafted that says, we might not go paint your cafeteria and redo your tiles, right? We might have to focus, so maybe that's a piece of, you know, just making sure they understand how we had to prioritize the ones where, you know, they're critical to the actual building functioning
Yeah,
versus that, just in case,
right,
instead of saying, and then we're gonna do this in next summer, and then we don't do it.
right.
Can the money be moved between schools, or is it just? Like, I know with one school, like with Western, there's the well and there's the other improvements that can go back and forth with the gym and the fitness center and all of that.
Yep.
But what about between schools? Like, is that a possibility that?
It'd be an amendment maybe to the original submission, but I can't see why it can't.
I don't, yeah, and I don't even think it's that far, but we just need to make sure that we're not making amendments to scopes that would impact our ability to receive the reimbursement. I think, you know, the what
I think
nearly
there's like-
50%
I
reimbursement.
think it's like one, like kind of go back to the state that you can kind of make that change. I think Phil is definitely the expert, but I feel like it's like one time you can go back and say, hey, here's the change of the funds, and they're generally okay. Like you can't go every week and move $50 and 100 like.
So we're not there yet.
well,
Yeah,
and as
and-
luck should have it, Bob was pulling together the paperwork for Dan and I to sign to go out to bond. And we had to give him a bunch of backup documentation to go with it, which was the bond council's language for the referendum that the voters voted on, the language for the what do they call it, continuing legislation, so that $25 million be approved by the General Assembly. The MOAs and MOUs that we've signed, everything has by school dollar amount. I'm pretty sure everything that we talked about today has by school dollar amount. So if there is a mechanism to be able to move money between schools, I can call Mario Moreno and see if he can give help with that. But the way the voters voted on it, the way we've signed everything, the dollars are assigned to the schools.
Another factor that we've discussed at many meetings is that the visibility of some of these projects, because some of the things on the list for 500,000, it's painting, it's plumbing, it's electrical, et cetera. The public does not see the impact of those kinds of changes. So when we discuss projects, we need to keep in mind what kinds of things might be visible to the people who go into the buildings, who have children in the buildings, who may want to say, gee, my money's at work. But they won't necessarily see their money at work if there's a change in the electrical or the fire suppression system, although those are critical. But people need to understand that I've got a skin in the game and I'm getting something for it. So I just like to add that to the list of criteria when we start discussing what projects need to be done with whatever money's available.
Don, one thing we gotta keep on our radar too is if we are able to realize that savings at Western, that stormwater system at Tyoog, that's already designed and ready to go. I think that's about 600,000. So we're getting a lot of issues with the residents in that area who have sinkholes and so forth, below Tyoog School. So if there's an opportunity to utilize that money, that might be the place to go, because that project's already designed and ready to go, just waiting for funding. We went out there last week and there's some big sinkholes in people's houses. And we're assuming it's part of the stormwater issues that we're having over there.
Yeah, and when we were pulling this all together, that wasn't on our list. That came in afterwards. So that was never even part of our original stage 2 application. So I'll have to ask Mario about that as well, because it addresses obviously an important issue, but I don't know how we deal with that part of it.
We should start a separate branding in case we don't get to do the cosmetics in this round. But I mean, I think most people, reasonable people, would listen to the projects that are underway and see them as structural needs.
Sweet, sweet Alita.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. I'm not a politician for just that reason. I'd be out, but I mean. What are you gonna do?
I will say that, even looking at number 4, the project update, just the ones I spoke about. Some of them are visible ones that we can definitely
Right.
market and sell. We've actually been floating some pictures out there on Facebook so people can see sort of the progress. But like, I think the sewer connection is not like a visible, sexy kind of project, but at the same time, I think it is the kind of thing that people in the community, especially the ones who live around the school, will recognize the impact of it, because, you know, we're pumping wastewater out every single day. And I'm sure, I mean, I've been there when they're pumping it out, watching a baseball game, and, you know, when that initial pumping starts, you can catch a whiff of that and be like, oh, they're pumping out the tank, you know? And so I think there will be some people that, even though they don't maybe see it, will say, thank goodness that's finally done. And same thing with the well. I think Western is like up to their neck with this well, and when that's done, I think there's gonna be some happy campers about that.
I'm just mentioning it as something to think
I
about.
think it's
as-
important.
As we go forward, yes. Or maybe we just put a big sign outside of school to say painting being done.
Yeah.
I mean, the state puts signs on the road, you know.
On time, on budget.
Yeah.
But, yes.
On time over budget. Yeah,
Just
right.
make a bunch of those.
So, you know, I think I can definitely talk to Mario, and, but I think we need to kind of come back to the timeline discussion when Phil's here.
Cause you've got the bundling aspect too, so you wanna do HVAC when you do other HVAC. Like
What-
the thing you're talking about.
Yeah, right, so there's I think there's health, there's safety, and there's a third one I can't remember, that if you bundle one safety one with something that's maybe not necessarily a safety project, you get the benefit of the safety incentive on both those projects. So you want to combine projects together so that you maximize, because if you put all the safety ones together, at the end of the rainbow, they're gonna be projects that no incentive is tied to, and then you're not gonna get any, you know, you'll get your regular reimbursement, but you won't get that, you know, 5% kicker or whatever it is that is coming your way. And I think there's only a handful left. I don't think there's, based on our projects, I don't think there's more than 2 or 3.
That's
That
why
way.
Phil is so critical in this decision, because he knows the rules
Yes,
very thoroughly.
yep, he does. This one, number 6, Hillary, you can kind of move the meeting along. I'm jumping on your words there.
No, you're okay.
Number 6, I think, is important. I think, we kind of have to figure out, and I've never been on a building committee before, but like, what are the roles and authority of each group? And the reason why I think it's important, because as we start rolling along, there are gonna be some decisions and some things that need to be done sort of like in real time. And if we're waiting for the next building committee, which could be a month out or 6 weeks out, or waiting for the next school committee or town council, so I just feel like at some point, we should have a conversation about like roles and authority of the folks involved.
I definitely like guidance from Mario, like what does he see other communities do on average? So that way, if there's questions from the community about why certain decisions were made either in front of this camera or not, we can explain that, you know, in other communities, this is how they've handled it.
Mhm.
So folks realize that we're not doing this in a vacuum, we're doing this process that we made up, that it's one that was advised by RIDE
Mhm.
to keep things moving and be transparent.
Not only can I talk to Mario, but I
I
have
mean, because he served
other
on Lincoln
districts that can
School
reach out.
Committee,
Yep.
so,
Mm.
I definitely want to hear guidance from him. He's probably gonna say, well, it's up to every community,
Yeah.
but I want to hear what on average, you know, some communities do this, some do that, like, I want to hear that.
And Phil also sits on a number of building committees, so I'm sure he can.
Yeah,
In
contribute
general,
that,
the
so.
building committee does a lot of the day-to-day and makes recommendations that either like, once the building committee approves it, then it goes to whoever that body is, whether it be school committee or town council, that's a different thing to work out. But a lot of the day-to-day and operations, in my experience working with the building committees, do a lot of that approval, anything that's the budget. So if you guys establish $25 million and you're making decisions on the spend of that, they make the approval recommendation, when in theory, it becomes like a rubber stamp because they're in the weeds, and then it goes to the next person and everybody has questions, but in theory, the building committee is actually pretty empowered.
So how often do they meet, the building committee?
They meet, the one that I'm on now, they try to meet as little as possible because we're like almost done. But it was bi-weekly, and then they, you know, minimized it and got it to monthly. Sometimes it gets hot and heavy and then it drops down. And then sometimes it's scheduled. Like right now, if we have like a handful of changes or something that need to get approved, we'll
Mhm.
schedule one. and say, hey, and there's a separate change order committee meeting that they'll meet on like the Tuesday so that they can get all the changes approved, because then the committee meeting's like the next Monday or something. So again, every district, when I did in Stonington, we did our change order meeting 5 minutes before, like we had at 3 to 4, we did change order meeting, and then 4 to 5, the building committee came and they just kind of had in general recommendations for changes, and then we went through the detail of them, because like, everybody
Mhm.
depending on schedules.
That's how North Providence handles it too. They have a separate subcommittee for change orders. They meet first, then they go to the school committee and to the school building committee. And then once they approve it there, then it goes right to the purchasing board meeting.
So purchasing is different than building committee?
So any changes has to be approved by the purchasing board in North
Because they
Providence.
write yeah, so
because
again,
they-
somebody's gonna hold the contract, so after the building committee does all that, in theory, somebody's gonna be the ones who take the recommendation of that committee and move it by, whether it's school committee, town council, you guys can fight that part out.
Mhm. Right,
Good information to have, but
Yeah.
very about this ride stage 3 approval,
Mhm.
just right, the gym and is underway. But is part of that coming out of the bond?
Yes.
And do we expect incentive on that?
I don't think so. So the way I understand it, Phil is still gonna submit paperwork because it's part of the project. So the way the POs have all been sort of like approved by school committee, been presented to town council. I talked to Mario, I said, so what's the approval process with these types of projects? And he said, it's not a full school construction.
Right.
These are like their basic level approvals. And so they have like an expedited, I guess, portal for these types of projects where you submit them, they check the box, and you're good to go. It doesn't go before like the big review board.
90 days.
Yeah, the 90 days, all that.
Right, okay.
And so I think when I talked to Phil last, I said, am I getting too hard ahead of ourselves by starting the demo? And he said, no, this happens all the time with these little projects. You can get started at it, but he's gonna submit it all. He has, I have access to the portal too. I said, well, I can do it. He said, I'll do it for you. It'll take me like 2 minutes. So they're gonna submit all of that, the science labs and the gym, and then eventually the light and sound for the auditorium. So it should be fine. I actually met with Mario for a long time and he said that was the way to do it. And he said, if they don't get like immediate approval, just to make sure I reach out to somebody to make sure, because they could be sitting in somebody's queue or something, that they'll actually check them off pretty quickly so you can keep moving. Because it's kind of a basic renovation, you pulled out bleachers, you're putting in bleachers, you pulled out floor, you're putting in floor. It's not a lot going on there that's significantly different. It's just most of the same stuff, just newer and better. For the most part.
Question on that?
Yeah.
So now you're making me think, while we're on roles and responsibilities, how we should treat, any change order, change control board type, project management activities, is there a threshold where it comes to this group, like if there's a major, I know we hope that there's not, but if you get a change order for, 75 grand might wipe out something we could do at a school. Do we have a threshold we should convene, or are we leaving that maybe it's better for OPM time, or,
That's kind of like the point, right? Like,
Yeah.
so we need to come up with some basic understanding and rules of how we're gonna operate so that I don't get myself in trouble, by saying, sure, I call Dan and Dan's like, sounds good, and we just roll with it. And next thing you know, somebody's like, what happened? I don't want that to happen. I want to make sure everything hits. What I do get worried about is just knowing that the mechanism of our meetings and how they go is there's the whole scheduling and the posting of the meeting. And sometimes by the time you have a meeting from when you first started thinking about it, it's been like 3 weeks. And so the nature of some of our projects might be, time
Well, it might
sensitive.
just be something where like, I think in the charter for Coventry, for town manager discretion, it's like anything over, what is it, 10 grand, you have to come to the council or something like that? I'm not saying 10 grand has to be the amount, but maybe there's something we agree to in that respect, that if it's a change or something, or an expense over a certain amount, that it needs to go to certain level.
Mhm.
give some delegated authority? But
Yeah,
Again, I'm sure Phil must be dealing with this.
Yeah.
type of-
I really want to hear,
Yeah, Phil must have a plateau. and-
The
Ours is
PM
20.
would have a lot of that info too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ours is 25 in Newport. It was like 10, but 10 doesn't buy you much. And anything $25,000 and under, the change, not even the building committee, the change order review group is able to authorize work to move forward 25,000 and under, but it's, it's $100-some-odd-million job, right? So whether we want that to
Right.
be the number, but again, $25,000, it's sad to say, it's like, it's not really a lot of money either.
It's
for-
like
for what-
10% of the contract value, I think,
Yeah.
is what North Providence has.
Yeah, so there's generally, each one will come up with that, because again, the timing of it is very critical, right? You kill a whole project if you gotta wait a month between every change order, that's a problem, so you have to have some type of a process.
Yeah, that was sort of what I was getting at, right?
Yeah, I'm sure Phil will be able to give us a concise timeline of exactly like how, and then with your help, trying to figure out how we structure these meetings, even if we schedule them, it's easier to cancel than it is to post them, correct?
Mhm.
So if we didn't need them for whatever reason, at least they've been announced, they're there. You can do a general agenda. Could you do that and then amend or no?
I'm sure, I think you're probably onto something. I think once you get moving along, there's gonna be probably 3 or 4 agenda item types, that things would fit under the umbrella of. I'm guessing, I've never done this before, but my understanding is, I think once you get going, I don't think we're gonna be like all over the place like we are now, trying to figure out every little thing. I think it's gonna be like this category, this category, this category. So we might be able to structure it with a standardized agenda.
Well, but again, it's probably easier for the building committee, right? So whoever it is gonna be, town council, school committee, whoever that is, needs to be willing to say, building committee, you guys are authorized to make these changes, even if they're the ultimate, and we'll review it kind of for information at the next town council or school committee or whatever it is. But I mean, it doesn't matter if we expedite these meetings, if everybody else, you guys meet the second Tuesday, whatever the hell that schedule is gonna be what it is. It's still not gonna help the process if we all agree we still gotta wait a month.
The other thing we can revisit, because I haven't looked at it in a long time, is what the regulations say in terms of the authority of the building committee, because there are things that are specifically assigned to this committee. Because that's the whole point why we have them, right? We have building committee because there's a specific requirements that have to be met. So I think I can meet with Mario. I can actually talk to other districts. I can have Phil weigh in, and maybe by the next meeting, we could talk about timeline, and he can come up with maybe a general overview or some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, if we can say we, come to the table and it's like, here's 3 models, what one do you feel like works best for Coventry? And then we
Yeah.
can decide. Whatever, 2 models.
Yeah, because what do we have to do? We gotta get the contracts cut right when we get the numbers in. We gotta be able to get contracts written quickly and then move on action when they start opening these walls and finding crap. Be able to adjust quickly and get stuff done.
Agreed. So, stage 3, I kind of left on there from last time, because I wasn't sure what has to be done next. I know once you done your stage 2 and everything's be approved, you're supposed to be pretty specific on what your plans are, but I think those are gonna connect back to your timeline and your bundling of projects, and I think those things are all interconnected. I don't know if everybody got a copy of this, and if I need to make more, I can. Phil sent me this morning, because I met with Phil last week, and I said to him, we have to get moving on OPM, and what's his recommendation? I had sent out an email to you guys. I went on the MPA just to see who's on the MPA. There was a few names that were listed, so if you look at this sheet, if you happen to have one in front of you, we listed these 3, Downs, Peregrine, and Left Field. They're all on the list. They all provide services that are probably within the scope of our project, because our project's small compared to what other people are doing. I do hear Downs is busy, from what I've heard, like
I worked with them before down in South Kingston.
yeah, they're pretty flat out. Peregrine, I heard some projects are coming off their list, so they might be flexible. And then Left Field, I really don't know much about at all. I'm out in left field on that field.
You were waiting.
Yeah.
You were waiting.
It's correct. It's a creative naming.
Good.
I know you guys have worked probably with all 3 of them at some point.
Is
So
there a reason those 3 in particular?
I basically was talking to different people and saying, listen, we're gonna have to do an OPM, but this is the scope of the work we have. This is the kind of project we have. People who know like what's going on in the state. And those 3 names are the 3 names that I don't know any of them. I have no relationship with any of them. Those are the 3 names that kept popping up in every conversation I had. So I said, well, if those are the 3 names that keep coming up, maybe we should start there. But really, it could be anybody. I just don't know with some of the big projects that are happening in the state, you know. Our $25 million project is not that big. I don't know how we're gonna, you know, be competitive when somebody has an opportunity to be an OPM in a high school construction job, you know, something like that. So I don't know, this is for conversation. So what Phil said is what we could do is we can solicit fees based on the scope of the work. You know, we can lay it out for them and say, this is what we're looking for. And then their responsibilities would be to attend the monthly meetings. I think that would be not the school building committee meetings. I think that'd be great, even back to our last conversation, because they would be contributing to how other people do it. So I think that'd be great. Attend, and this was something that Phil put down. Attend bi-weekly executive group meetings, superintendent, facilities, finance, to facilitate meetings and document minutes. So I guess that would be part of their role. Develop bond project budgets, tracking financials with the finance director, report out at the monthly meetings. What's an OA meeting? I don't know what that is.
Like owner, architect.
Okay.
That's what I-
Yeah, I don't know. Develop master
We'll take your
project.
word for it.
Yeah. I don't know. If you two don't know, then we're screwed.
What you see is usually what we're calling, but there's no contractor
Yeah.
involved at this
Right.
stage. So
Right.
it's a-
Develop a master project schedule to track accordingly, attend and participate in bi-weekly contractor meetings, periodically observe construction activities in parallel with the architect engineer to review contracts, applications for payments, so on and so forth. And these are the projects that he has. These are all big projects, right? The fire suppression system and the roof system. And then other projects coming down the way. I don't think we're gonna need an OPM for the gym, because the way the POs are all in, they're all under $500, because the different pieces of work, like we have demo on one PO, we have floors on a different PO, we have bleachers on a different PO.
But for the whole scope of being part of the bond reimbursement, our portion of it, do we think we should envelope
We could do that.
the OPM so that
Mhm.
way they do all of the state paperwork, legwork portion
Yep.
for all of it?
Yeah, that's stuff that, you know, is what we have to work out. Definitely the sewer project for the school department, and then the Western Well. So, you know, obviously I read that. I didn't write this. I read it. Phil, is there anything that we're missing? Anything that should be added?
I have a question. It says attend monthly meetings and report out. I mean, that's, in a way, report out is vague. I mean,
Mhm.
do we want to specify whether it's a written report or an oral report? Does the person have to be in attendance? And if we don't have a monthly SBC meeting, do they still report out on some kind of monthly basis or regular basis to somebody?
Yep.
So I think that needs to be clarified as
Mhm.
to the accountability that they have for what they're doing.
It's like a written budget to actual tracking or?
Well, I would go by the guidance of these women who have been doing this work for a long, long time. It just seems to me that report out is too vague. And I don't necessarily think that we'd be meeting on a monthly basis. I do not know. So if we didn't have a meeting and if that's the only time they report out, we would know nothing about what's going on and how
Mhm.
well things are going. Project to plan data.
Yeah, and that would really be what it is. I see it more so like in than out, right? They would give their OPM update, which would be an overview of all of the ongoing projects and
The overview,
status,
yeah.
costing of, you know, where we're at, true to budget. If we're running into, if we find something, be the notification they found, you know, this and we're investigating it, potentially getting the
Right.
additional cost, anything that would affect the cost or schedule, they would have their thumb on for the individual jobs and they would be the ones who got back to us. And I'm assuming there's somebody who they're telling prior, right? We're not waiting to the meeting. Don knows if
Right.
something came
Mhm.
up, they're at least sending an email,
Yeah.
but just for the sake of the body of the SBC, that would come in our formal.
So have you seen OPMs actually report out to building committees?
Yeah, they do an update.
Do they do oral reports? Do they do written reports?
Depends on what you have. It tends to be, they usually have like a written financial document, like, hey, here's our budget, here's what we're tracking to, what we've encumbered,
Okay.
what's left and the balance that we haven't,
Right.
you know, spent yet that we need to procure.
Mhm.
And then, usually it's just a conversation about this, but again, the CM goes on this smaller job, you might not have the contractors, so they would have an additional role where I go and I talk about the status of the construction and what the next 2 weeks in the site looks like and all that. That would be, in this case, I would think we would just have him do it rather than have 4 different individual guys coming to talk about it.
So perhaps you could give some guidance to Don as to how he could, write out these responsibilities, especially on the report out, what we actually expect for a report out. I wouldn't know really what to put in the report, but I think report out is too vague.
Yeah, no.
So
I don't
maybe Don, you
disagree.
can get some guidance from Alicia.
I'll send it to both Alita and Christine.
Yeah, that would be great.
Um,
And also, attend meetings. Can we go do it by Zoom or do they have to come in person? How does that work?
Well,
Alita?
I mean, everything's back to in person for public meetings, so.
Okay.
it's
So it would have to be in
in-person
person,
requirement.
okay.
I think they're all still recorded and broadcast, but I think the Public Meetings Act, it's all back to.
Okay.
so in terms of selecting somebody, because this is time sensitive. You know, we could have a solicitation of fees and scope of work and response to like the responsibilities that we map out. And just take those. I don't know, applications, if you want to call them, and just decide. Based on what they wrote, this is how much they said it's gonna cost.
Mhm.
This is how they respond to our questions as a committee. This is the one we want. Or we could have people come in and do interviews like we did when we were picking, I think it was an architect, right?
Yeah, we had the
You know,
architects come in.
Based on my conversation with Phil, knowing, especially with the sprinkler project, how important it is to get that, done fast and right. He wants to get an OPM on sooner than later. So unless, I'm okay with them submitting something unless people feel like they really want them to come in person.
I would lean toward, I don't think we need to your point, Don. I think we would take a request for qualifications and then we would negotiate the fee
Mhm.
based on the services. And, because again, they're all gonna give you, they all do this, right? So they're gonna give you the same spiel of what they can do. You're gonna get the write-up. It's really just who's gonna really help you get to the number and who can do what you need quickest. Who's ready on the day we need them to start. If we sign a contract tomorrow, you're at the next meeting.
Mhm.
So I don't know, because once you get into getting cost proposals and then somebody comes in screaming low and now you gotta evaluate why. There's
Yeah,
usually trouble when
point.
somebody's
Yeah.
screaming low.
So stay-
I was just thinking.
I prefer quals-based, me.
We also need to know what kind of resources they have available to put on this project. If this is such a low-cost project for them, they might put on junior people, and maybe that's okay, but we would need to know in the proposal just who is going to do the work and the experience of that particular person.
Yeah, and that should be one of the clauses, right? List 3 similar scope and size projects. This isn't abnormal for the
Right.
state. People are doing $20 to $50 million small projects all around. List 3 that you've done that are appropriate with what we're doing, and we can talk to the people.
Right.
working on it.
We can add, it's not untypical to ask for resumes of the people who'd be working on it, just high level summaries of the kind of skills they have, because if we run into, do you consider the OPM responsible for like a permitting issue or things like that? Would that be in their wheelhouse? Because you may want someone who has, a background thinking of the sewer project. Things like that where you could maybe fine tune who we're getting a little bit, but.
Well, the more appropriate information we ask for ahead of time, the easier it will be for us to make a decision.
Okay.
I might be able.
Was there an element here to Don's point that we can't be so incredibly nitpicky into the details because we're such small potatoes compared to the other projects they could have? I just want to.
The big
Devil's
jobs,
advocate.
the big school jobs, if we're being real, they're pretty much done, right? There's maybe a
Okay,
couple
so
others, so it's like
I
now.
just want to understand the landscape here of what we're asking and, okay.
Yeah,
That's
most of
fine
the
then.
big projects have an OPM on them right now. There's some of these smaller ones and there's a couple other bigger ones that are coming where, I don't really know the status of the OPM, like a Bristol I hear is coming out. But I think most of those other ones are occupied.
There's 34 vendors on that MPA, so you might have a good shot if others are busy. If we write one good scope, it's just a matter of sending it to more.
Right, but even though we have a small project, relatively speaking, we need the best quality work on it.
So.
I will get your money's worth from the OPM. I will make them earn their check.
Oh, good.
You're like a Carl salesman,
So
you
much
guarantee it.
Or else, Russ will look over their shoulder. make sure it's being done
Yeah, I'll
right.
look over there, sure.
Okay,
I think
you
we've been.
wanna go on the
our
list,
entire
Russ?
lives.
When you retire, you can go on the list.
So
I
if I
retire.
work with
Won't be long.
Christine and Alita and Phil and come up with some sort of like scope,
Yeah.
you know, what our
That's a good
request,
resource.
okay, JP, get like a request for like what we want from them in terms of scope of work. Is it okay that we just collect those applications versus having people come in and
Yep.
do interviews?
Yes,
Okay,
review
good.
them here.
OPM selection subcommittee
Yep,
to go through the process.
yep,
I'm waving my wand.
it's done. Let it be so.
And then we come back to a meeting with a recommendation.
Anna has a question.
So, okay.
So do OPMs, I would imagine they could certainly come as well, if Phil comes to some of our meetings to be able to present and talk about and answer any questions that we might have, right? If
Yeah, that would be,
that's
in
correct.
general, they would be part of this, and
Just wanted to make sure that,
they'd be keeping us all posted on
okay,
all of these details that like pretty much
Yeah.
all done. And Russ just gave us the update on the
Exactly.
work. They would give us the update on
okay.
that.
I wanted to make sure that,
Maybe think, are they paid out of the bond funds? Right.
And I'm sure, I don't know, you know, what every single OPM does in every single project. I get my impression from some people that on some project types, the OPM is like crucial. And other project types, the OPM is there as like your eyes and ears, but not as crucial to like the work getting done because they're not the subcontractor, they're not the general contractor, they're just, you know, but you have to have them for a certain dollar amount project.
It's like 75-80% communication, keeping people
Mhm.
aligned and chasing everything down to some.
project manager.
So,
All right, so second question then, if, and it can be more than just these people, but Alita, Christine, JP, Phil. Is anybody else who's interested in sort of like coming up with a draft of the scope of work and the different, qualifications? Are we looking for this group to pick from 3? Are we looking for this group to pick from a recommendation from like a subgroup?
I think it should be, here's who responded, here's who the subcommittee has recommended. Do you have any objections?
I
That would-
agree with that.
That would
I
make
agree
things
with that.
move.
Yeah.
So that way we can see what the bids were, understand why you made the choice you made and say, okay, sounds good.
So what I'll do is I'll draft something to the best of my ability and then just float it to people. You give like feedback, whatever. Yeah, even better. Then you. float it to me.
So
And then you can play with it.
See, I signed you up for something that's easy, it's already done.
Thank you.
I have one somewhere.
We
Okay.
must have more than one.
I
Cousins.
have a few, I have a few. I have one, and I feel like I could probably reach out to a couple OPMs. I'm feeling like there were some communities I know did similar size and scope, so they might be the right RFQs to kind of
Mhm.
mimic, so.
Mhm. Yeah.
I email myself to remind me to do it, but I can't. Remember. I say all these good things and then
I have more emails to myself.
Right, exactly.
From me,
exactly.
like, they all say from me.
Oh, Don.
He's being a real pain today. I keep arguing with myself.
Did we, just a quick
Yeah.
question, did we anticipate this to be design, bid, build for most of these, or
I
there is
think,
gonna be the design element in here and not a design build?
so I think that's what Phil said. That's a Phil question better than a Don question, because I think he did talk about using that model because of the kind of projects that we're doing.
Yeah.
Design, approval, build, design, approval, build, that kind of thing. And actually, I think even Phil said, even for some of the big projects, that's what people are doing now, because when I think one of you two even said, like, the prices are changing, materials are changing. How you get stuff is changing in terms of like time, so it doesn't make sense to design everything up front and then
Right.
move forward, right?
The other thing, Don, is at the last meeting, we said, okay, we've got $500,000 allocated to each of the elementary schools. But Phil was not specific about the distribution of that money within the school. And I think we said that we wanted a little more clarity and recommendation from him. Is it gonna be painting? Is it gonna be a tile? Is it gonna be a toilet? Whatever is it gonna be? But we have no idea right now, in general, what the $500,000 is gonna be used for or could be used for. And we need some clarity on that.
Well-
because You're gonna have to give that to the OPM.
And I think though, to Alita's point, we need to be careful about what's promised, given the change in the cost of
Yeah.
supplies and
Right.
labor. And knowing that we've got here on this, the highest priority, not including the school, the middle school group. So we have to see where we're at after these 5 projects and the middle school roof. And go from there.
To follow up with what Ann just said, if I recollect what Phil said is OPM will not have to manage every project.
Exactly.
It's something that Russ and someone else could handle.
I remember.
So $500,000 for the schools may not be something we give to the OPM to
Mm.
manage.
Mhm.
No, I
They're-
no, I completely agree with that. I'm just talking about, we want a guidance from Phil as to what projects might be done at each of these elementary schools.
What's possible.
Yeah, what's possible, because we
It's
have,
going to be up to us to choose, so
Right.
we need to know what's priority.
yeah, but I mean, we talked about the need to discuss that.
If we're gonna effectively bundle anything, we'll need the lowest or the highest level of detail for each subcomponent, just
We
to
will.
see, you know,
Mhm.
on a level what would fit together.
That's true.
Yeah, and then again, did I say that here? Did we talk about that here? What meeting was I in? Did we talk about like, the idea of asking the schools, like what they would like to see done? And it might not even come anywhere near 500,000, which would be nice, but it would make everybody feel as though they got something that they wanted or that their school community wanted.
So,
Maybe it's-
Christine
yeah.
and I, we discussed this before the meeting began, just
Involving the families.
Yeah,
involving-
something like,
involving
right?
the families, what do they like to see done?
Yeah,
Well,
they
and-
all get like a little contest and then we go and everybody votes and then at least everybody feels vested in what.
Well,
money we do.
if you remember, like way back, like way back, pre-middle school project back, we went with every single school and had people do sticky notes
Oh, yes.
and the different project types.
Building committee 1.0 did that, right?
Yes,
yes.
We're on 2.0.
Yeah, or 3.
Yeah, or maybe 3.
I think if you go that route, you have to provide like options for people because.
Oh, yeah.
We're at a
Crazy.
point where these schools.
It's not wide open.
Some of these school buildings can't function any longer without some of the updates we've identified, like. Sure, you know, something else a bit more cosmetic may sound great, but if the school's got an HVAC issue, like. That's gonna take precedent
Yeah,
over.
that would
They want the
be,
same playgrounds at
That's what I'm
first,
saying,
Very popular, like that's what
course.
we need, so
Yeah.
if that's not in the scope of work, we have to be.
That's what I mean, if
captured
you
in
go
the
forward and
effective-
say like, here's the top needs we've identified, you know, we'd love to get you involved in this process, but you can't go in with a blank slate.
yeah,
I think
well,
it-
but- oh, go ahead.
I think it might be good to just resurrect what we sold when they voted on the
Yeah.
line.
Yeah,
Like, because I think if we pull that paperwork, right, we had some pretty good graphic printouts that talked about exactly what we were gonna be doing. I think we should resurrect that and kind of stay that course. Again, to the point where things are becoming so much more expensive, I get worried about what else we can afford.
yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. So that's where my fear of, there's not 500,000 to spend.
No,
There might have been all of this stuff on this list. We might boil down to having to just do the HVAC system because they have to have it, and then you get no visual bang for the buck.
Right.
So that's kind of where the thought was coming from, something to make people feel like they got something they wanted, because they might not be able to get something they wanted, but to your point, that has to be a focused list of things.
Well, then
that
it becomes an
they-
education process on how far your dollar gets you in school construction today, because I think
Right.
there's a lot of folks that don't have the concept of what a certain amount of money gets you today,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
$500,000 does not go very far.
I just feel like we pushed out like a couple of items, like whether it was paint or like window shades. I'm just throwing things out there, but
Sure.
I feel like there was a few targeted
more
items
outlets for
at
charging,
those
yeah.
in that $500 range. So even if we took the list of 10 items that fit in there and say, okay, wait, these like 4 we can't do, but the 6 that were on the list that we can cover. It might just help because
I'm gonna try to dig
we
up
did
that
all vote on
PowerPoint.
this at one point.
Yeah.
anytime.
Well, all right, and who's prepared for this conversation? I have to tell you this because I try my best to not be involved in the politics in this town.
Mhm.
But when we call
Why
the
not?
meeting and we are, because it's dramaful, and I don't like drama in my life.
Oh.
And and well, when
think
we
so?
came back here, so you have the hurdle of, if I'm a person and now I can't get what I want, my next question is, well, why did it take so long?
Mhm.
We voted on this however long ago. We could have afforded it, like what,
Mhm.
why, and then it goes back to finishing the audit and just all this other stuff that just makes it.
So that was one of the things I said for the number 9 here is, I think we have time now to plan for really robust involvement of this messaging in open houses at the end of August. I think we'll be at a point where we can give substantial updates on things finished at the high school, or near completion. I think there's an opportunity where when we can finish some of these things at the high school, say the science labs, the gym, and even the auditorium to an extent, invite the public in, even if they don't have kids, like,
Mhm.
this is what your tax dollars paid for, like, let people come in and see what their money got them, have some refreshments out from, the kids in the culinary program, like, do something like that. And then, obviously the website piece, I think if we start putting a QR code to that landing
Mhm.
page everywhere, whether it's in your update that you
Mhm.
do, or
Yep.
your town manager's update, that the link to the website that says the timeline for at least these 5 items here that we have.
Yep.
And the project updates. And then maybe it's a matter of, before the school year ends, Don, Russ, or whatever, go on the community radio and talk about what's going on.
Mhm.
I think that's low hanging fruit. That doesn't cost you anything.
Yep, and John Parenti
Yeah.
that's easy.
And the reality is, these things do take time. So if the timing of that message is such that other things are completed and we're finishing the rest, it makes it a better answer to
Mhm.
because even, you know what I mean? They do take time. Just that simple.
I might consider a video, like, do you have students? I know you have graphic design, but I don't know if there's a program where students do any like filming of video or anything,
It's
but
funny. It's funny you should bring that up. So back in the day, I think I've said this at this meeting, if not, it was school committee, Coventry High School's radio station was like
yes,
like this. So we are working on building out like a communications pathway, which capitalizes on the broadcasting part of it, but then there's a production class, and they go opposite each other in terms of semesters. And then our tech ed program has video and digital production in it.
Mhm.
So we're gonna try to market. We're trying to put together a bundle of classes that includes like journalism, video, audio broadcasting, podcasting, social media, all these communication mechanisms. I know this is what you do for a living, like all these things together. And so like we actually have our radio station running right now.
Mhm.
And we have a club that runs it, but we're gonna have a class now that's gonna be, there's 25 kids registered for it. I'm
Nice.
shocked. And I actually, RIDE just put out another version of their technology grant that they did like 2 years ago, and I put in an application. Actually, I think I'm waiting for Bob Savetti to sign off. To get funding to pay for all the materials that will go with it. And then I'm working with John Parenti to get the radio station set up. So I guess my point is, yes,
yeah,
we're
but
working
that
to
could
have
be part
all
of
of
their
that.
curriculum,
Yep.
something to
Yep.
put out videos on
Yep.
Updates. I think that's easy.
And there was a video we did way back at middle school time that
Mhm.
I thought was a great video that kind of showed, I thought the kids did it. Didn't they do the video for
I
the
don't know
middle
who
school?
did it.
It was like showing the stuff that was, wrong and what we were doing. Yeah, remember that
Yeah.
video?
I think that was professionally done.
Oh, was it? I mean, I'm just maybe,
Students.
maybe it's something like that. That's just like a little quick hit of the, what's bad and what's wrong. The big, hey, don't drink the water at Western sign that just sits in the window perennially, right?
Yep.
And then flash out like, something. Is it back?
No, it's down at the moment. It's in my drawer.
Just keep it laminated and ready to go.
It's definitely limited.
So I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
but to your point, but yeah, something like that, just letting people to see the need. If you
Mhm.
see how bad it is and see it, it might help with this, the marketing. effort.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have the landing page on our website. I'm not gonna say it's built out completely, but it's a dedicated school construction, so we can definitely QR code it. He has already put up pictures that went with the auditorium project. So we can start linking our different projects with different videos and pictures in there. It just needs to be dressed up a little bit. Right now, it looks more of like a bunch of like the URL hits, click here, click here, click here. I think it needs to be like,
Yeah, yeah.
can it,
Jazzed up.
can it update under each project, like update week of May
I'm
5th?
sure it could. I mean, we just do it.
This is, the gym floor arrived today and,
Mhm.
we scraped the walls, or I don't know, even if it's like 3 sentences,
Yep.
like.
Do we have any, like, from the design perspective, do we have like any renderings or of our actual gym or?
So we have a gym design of, well, we have a rendering that's not like our gym, but like
Yeah,
a picture of the
another one,
color,
yeah.
we have that. And then we have like it's not a spec drawing, but we have a drawing that shows like where the bleachers are gonna be, how the floor is gonna be laid out. So we definitely have things that we can put up there.
I was wondering if it's something they could model. It looks flashy if you could like stand in the gym
Mhm.
and this is what it's gonna look like. But if we don't have those for
No.
documents, then
Set up the
obviously.
map for
Yeah,
it,
it's too
man.
much. Yeah, it's too much.
I think like what needs to be addressed in communication or on the website, and maybe it is, I can't get on right now, but the when, even if it's loose,
Mm.
like when, like the well, when,
Mhm.
even just to your point of, we built this saying that every school was gonna be touched and that's what we sold. Even just that, like those decisions will be made at a certain point, some kind of a loose timeline.
Yeah, so it's funny because
So people know what's coming.
all these things are interconnected, right? Because I started reading notes for next meeting. So I have like draft the timeline, bundle the projects, like that's connected to that,
Yeah.
And then the roles and authority, basically getting some info from other people. What's the stage 2 look like in terms of the clarity of the project? So I think all those things are interconnected. OPM and communication. A few people had volunteered to do communications work. As soon as we're like ready to like go, I talked to a leader on the phone. I think Kristen and the other Kristen, right? All signed up. So we could definitely get going on that once we have some framework in place,
Public comment,
Well, we don't have Zoom. This is just a broadcast.
all right, scheduling of next meeting.
So last meeting, we didn't have this on the agenda. We all ran out the door and we didn't have it, so I put it on. So I think it has to probably be sooner than later if we're this OPM. Buttoned up. We probably need like 2 or 3 weeks to maybe 4 weeks to get the. Request for information together and then out the door, then back.
June 2nd.
Let me see here. June 2nd is a Monday. It's fine with me. I don't know how everybody else feels.
That's 4 weeks.
Could we expedite it? I mean, I don't wanna take 4 weeks to get the.
I think we can try to do a week before.
Yeah, we can tell the guys.
Before Memorial Day, we don't have to do
No,
another-
no, I mean, do it on the 2nd, but be ready to go.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
that's the
have it
plan.
Done, out, award.
With a recommendation to
Yeah.
this group on that day.
Yeah,
Second,
okay,
yeah,
yeah,
should
okay.
be a
All right.
recommendation.
I thought you
Yeah.
said to have it written. I
Yeah.
was like, no, no.
So June 2nd,
Yes.
Fix the coffee again.
6.
what's the flying reason that the 5th?
So for those of you that don't know Chris DeVerna, Chris is our finance director. So Chris wasn't part of the original OG building committee. That was 2 finance directors ago. But now that we're at the point where we're spending money and gonna have to do things with housing aid and everything else, Chris needs to be at these meetings so that he can stay on top of the financing, so that's Chris.
I'm gonna double check.
2nd, no, we're talking about something else.
No, something else.
You ready to adjourn?
Yes, do I have a motion to adjourn at 7:15?
Make a
make a-
motion. Oh, I second.
Motion and second, all those in favor indicate